It's ugly, but it's saved me a lot of swearing. So I didn't show too much of the machining of the damper rods in the last series I did, so I'm just showing that. Oh, idiot, drop it on the floor. So I just did some videos while I was machining them. I just machined the top of the damper rod out there just to accept the 16.5mm of that, so it'll just fit nicely in there. Don't have to do that. I have done it before just with a big drill, or you can just get a spacer that fits, that it can fit inside, otherwise it'll be a bit wobbly in there. And then the holes that are in the bottom of here, which usually would control the compression damping in this piston rod fork, they're standard 2 5mm holes, and we just drilled that out to 8mm and added another 8mm, so that there's a nice big hole in there, and the compression damping is controlled by the little valve in there, and the tension on it by that spring there. Rebound damping, the only control you have over that is changing the weight of the fork oil. You gotta go, I know. 'Cause the free wind is blowing through your hair, and the days surround your day. You've just seen a video clip of me arsing about with the forks in the vise and springs and hanging weights on it and stuff. So what I was doing there, it's about to get nerdy, I was trying to measure the spring rate of the original fork springs that came with the bike, with a view to increasing the spring rate. I was measuring to see if they obeyed Hooke's law. And Hooke's law says, an empirical law which states that the force F needed to extend or compress a spring by some distance, x, scales linearly with respect to that distance. That is Fs equals Kx. So effectively, if you put 10 newtons on a spring and it compresses 1mm, the next millimeter will take another 10 newtons, and so on and so on, and you get a straight line. However, work out what I would need to cut off that spring to make it shorter and effectively make it a higher spring rate. Anyway, I thought I'd do this little experiment. My daughter is 11 and she was doing it in her science lesson a few weeks back, Hooke's law, and I thought I would recreate what I did when I was 11. It's not a perfect system. I have got some friction in it. I don't know if you'll be able to see the line on it. So I got pretty much a straight line. I didn't really see this non-linear relationship. So I hung on from 5 kilograms to 30 kilograms using the weights that I used to lift and I don't lift anymore. Anyway, in theory, I should have got 4.8, but I got an average of about 8.2. So that's out of the window. But what I am going to do, I'm going to refer to the Ozbucket Racing link that Ian Denny sent me when I first started doing this years ago, where it explained how to cut off 100mm of the spring from the tight coil end, so that should be the softer end, shortening the spring and increasing the spring rate. I worked out I'm going to cut off about 87mm, which is pretty much that tight coiled end bit. I may measure the spring rate afterwards again, but I'm just going to cut that off and replace it with a spacer, see what it's like. A lot of people race these bikes just with the standard springs in. I haven't got the YSS springs to put in. I might get them at a later date, but I'm just going to do the old school, cut the spring down and put it back together and replace that with a spacer. So if you've got this far in the video and I haven't bored you to death, that means you must be liking it. And if you're liking it, why don't you consider subscribing to the channel? And here's my little graphic that tells you how to do that. Isn't that wonderful? Click that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything and it means the world to me. It keeps me motivated to keep going and making more videos. Mega shout out. I'm just working out what length spacers I'm going to need to compensate for the springs that I've cut off and also the emulators. So I've got these adjustable preload caps to replace the original horrible things there, and comparing those, this is on wound out to its minimum. Line those up together, they're pretty much exactly the same depth from where the spring clip holds it, there, so that distance is the same, so I don't need to make a compensation change for that, and then I can add more preload here. Then I need to subtract, so these are the original ones. I need to add on the 87mm to compensate for the spring that I've cut off, and then also I need to subtract that length there, which is the emulator, so that's going to be sitting inside. So that's 14mm, so I've done a calculation there. So the original one's 100, I'll cut off 87mm of spring, so there's 187, but then minus 14 gives me 173mm, so I need two of those at 173mm. I'm going to cut those with a circular saw. And fortunately, I bought this 1 meter length of 22mm aluminium to make the handlebars from. I'll need two lengths about a foot long for the handlebars, and that'll leave me some spare, and I'll have just enough to cut 2 spaces out of that, so 22mm.
Which connection I should cut? I was feeling part of the scenery. What's right out of the machinery? My heart going boom, boom, boom. Hey, he said, grab your things, I've come to take you home. Hey, back
So to continue and just confirm, I did put the springs in and 25 kilos of weight on it, and measured the extension again on the same system. I think we established that my measurement was way out of what we were expected when I originally measured them as about 8.2 when they should be 4.8. However, I have measured a change in that system. Mine's gone from 8.2 to 10.7, which is a 30% increase in spring rate. If you compare what the claimed OEM rate versus the ones that you buy from Freetech, that's a difference of 4.8 to 6.2, an increase of 23%. So I've increased the spring rate. Let's see what they feel like. If they're complete gash, then I'll just buy some. Anyway, enough faffing about with this. I need to get them put back together. Actually, having a look at the photos, they are pretty crappy condition. It's not really the conditions for painting yet, but I want to get them back together. So I've just given them a rub down with some wet and dry and a clean up, and I'm just going to spray them. I've warmed them up with a heat gun, and I'm going to spray them with this just gloss black rattle can, just to smarten them up a little bit, and I might consider repainting them later in the year or having them powder coated.
I see a red door and I want it painted black. No colors anymore, I want them to...
So that's a couple of coats of rattle cans, gloss black on those. While those are drying off, I'm going to have a look at putting the steering stem back together and the bearings in. I'm probably going to give that a bit of a satin black as well, and then I've got something to put the forks into. Mega Shed Diaries, 10th of February 26. I've got to get on with it. I keep putting it off. This video is getting longer and longer, but I'm going to put the forks together. I want to do it to fast speed without talking, so I've laid everything out, what's going to go where, just to convince myself of anything else. So right through the bottom, the copper washer's still in the bottom of the fork, bolt in there, goes into that in the inside, that on there. That's the damper rod. Sitting on top of the damper rod that I've machined is the emulator. Spring on top of the emulator. Spacer on top of the spring. Washer. You can see, washer. And that's all inside of the tube. So I should have said that that goes in first. Inside of here, got that big washer, then new fork seal, new one of those clips that keeps the fork seal in, new one of these clips. I could only get one of them, so I'm going to have to reuse one, which holds in, instead of the original, what would you call it, spring retainer cap. I've got preload adjuster there. And then we've got a new dust sail from Wemoto that'll go over the top there after I've taken that off. Let's get on with it. Oh, and I'm going to be filling it with, I've got 30 weight suspension fluid. The recommendations I think from PowerTech is 150 mils of 30 weight fluid. I'm just going to do what they say. The last one I think I used 20 and a bit of larger volume, but I'll do what they say. Make a shit out.
Chewing on a piece of grass, walking down the road. Tell me how long you gonna stay here, Joe. Some people say this town don't look good in snow. You don't care, I know. Ventura Highway in the sunshine, where the days are long.
Just got some pressure on the spring to hold that. Put some pressure on the nut so you can tighten it up without it spinning round.
You gotta go, I know. 'Cause the free wind is blowing through your hair, and the days surround your daylight there. Seasons crying, no despair. Alligator lizards in the air. They're in the air.
See how this tool gets on. So I bought the genuine piece from Suzuki to replace this tiny little spring that goes in there, and it felt a little bit thicker. It looks about the same, but it didn't seat in the right place. So there's a lesson. You don't throw the old bits away till you're absolutely sure you've got the new bits fitted. So I'm reusing the old one there. It just it was just a little bit too thick. So the tool worked okay. There's one fork built. I think this spacer is going to need shortening a bit. It was quite tight to get that in there. I had another go with that clip. It just wasn't really moulded into it. The one that was in before obviously had seated itself in there. I just had to give it a bit more of a push into the outside. Then I measured them and they were within a micron of each other in size. Anyway, I'd missed a washer, so I took the top out and did it again. But I've managed to get it seated. But I'm going to have to use the old one on the other one because I've only got one spring clip anyway. Well, I'm just going to repeat the same process with the other fork now. That's the second fork done, all back together. This tool I made last night, it's ugly, but it's saved me a lot of swearing. It was worth the time spent to make it. Probably use it again in the future because I'm going to be taking these out, changing spacers. I'm not going to be able to put it on whilst they're in the bike unless I drop the forks through so I can get a grip on there, but still worth doing. Mega shout out.